Hello everyone, my name's Zenitsu, and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at RB01, and RB01 with the starter deck 15 and 16 offer us plenty of new tech and tools to think about incorporating into some new and existing decks, and today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be one of my favorites, and that's going to be a new iteration on the Metalgarurumon deck. So if anyone is unfamiliar with Metalgarurumon X, or Melga for short, the deck has been around since BT9, and at that time it was one of the top meta contending decks for quite a while, but as more defensive tools entered the game, it's slowly fallen out of favor, especially with the limitation to promo 008 Weregarurumon severely hindering the deck's overall damage output to be able to keep up with some of the more recent decks. But now that we have starter deck 16 and some new Garurumon cards to play around with, the deck is able to be meta competitive once again. At the core, the deck is a stack-based combo deck, where you're trying to line up a whole bunch of different attacks in a single turn to try to close out games as fast as you possibly can, or put as much pressure onto the opponent as fast as you can and close it out later. It also utilizes the X antibody mechanic to further enhance its combo plays. The deck does have some pretty decent built-in protection with battle protection, making it harder for the opponent to stop all of the incoming damage, and making it so that your Digimon actually has some decent levels of survivability, because we're going to start swinging as early as level 5 to be able to start swinging multiple times with, and the more we Digivolve, the more attacks we're going to be able to line up. The biggest weakness with the deck is that it still can be walled out or controlled out of the game, and it does have a slight consistency issue due to the small tiny bit of purple splash to the blue base that we're going to be playing around with. But once you get past all of that, it's still just a very fun and powerful deck to be playing around with. But with all that said and done, let's just dive right into the deck profile, starting with our Digitamers. So I am only going to be running 4 Digitamers because we ideally shouldn't need a 5th Digitama because we can close out the game before we get to that point. And the Digitama I am going to be using is going to be 4 copies of the BT5 Sunamon, just because it's one of the best DP boosting Digitamas that Blue has to work with, on top of the Garurumon synergy that we're already playing around with, to try to make our Digimon as strong as we possibly can to increase their overall chance of survival when we're going to be attacking with our Digimon. Then I'm going to be running a pretty simple and efficient level 3 lineup of just our Gabumons. So I'm going to be running 4 copies of the starter deck 8 Gabumon, similarly to Sunamon, to try to DP boost our Digimon and make it as strong as we possibly can. The cool thing about Gabumon is the fact that it's during all turns, so it works both offensively and defensively to make it even harder for the opponent to deal with our Digimon. Then I'm going to be running 4 copies of the BT5 Gabumon as a good searching or digging tool for our Garurumon and Omnimon based cards, on top of the fact that I'm going to be utilizing 4 copies of Gabumon X antibody as another searching or digging tool, looking for, again, our Garurumon or Omnimon based cards and our X antibody option, with a whole bunch of ways on being able to utilize him because of his on play and when Digivolution condition, on top of the fact that he's an X formed Digimon, which means he could Digivolve on top of a base form for 0 for additional cycling. Next, on to the level 4s, I'm going to be running 4 copies of the Promo Garurumon. So the Promo Garurumon is one of the most important cards in the whole deck, just because it's one of the best draw engines, because its inheritable ability for our higher stage Digimon isn't limited to once per turn. So when our Digimon is attacking, as long as it has Garurumon in its name, we get to draw a card, and because we're going to be trying to attack multiple times in a single turn, this allows us to draw a decent number of cards really quickly. Then I'm going to be running 2 copies of the BT5 Garurumon, just because it's one of the best alternative Garurumons that we currently have to work with, because its inheritable ability also is trying to DP boost our Digimon during all turns to make them as strong and annoying as possible, while also being pretty tempo efficient at times, because if we're Digivolving this on the field, and our Digimon is either a Gabumon or has Gabumon in its Digivolution source, then we get a gain of memory, so it's effectively making this card Digivolve digivolve for 1, allowing us to turbo up into our higher stages a little bit quicker than what the opponent might be anticipating. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Garurumon X antibody. So this is another X antibody Digimon, so it does have that digivolve on top of a base for some added cycling. And we do want to do that because its inheritable ability during all turns is what's adding some decent protection for our Digimon. So when a Digimon with Garurumon or Omnimon in its name would be deleted by battle, then we get to trash 2 cards of the same level in this Digimon's Digivolution source to be able to prevent that deletion, allowing us to actually have some protection to try to make our Digimon as safe as it possibly can be. And then when it comes to the level 5s, I'm going to be running 1 copy of the promo Weregarurumon. So the promo Weregarurumon is such a strong card that it did end up getting limited, which is why we can only run 1 copy of this card. The reason why this card is limited is because of how much pressure it could put onto the opponent to close out games super quickly, because its native ability of when attacking once per turn allows us to be able to unsuspend this Digimon as long as it has Garurumon in its Digivolution source, so we could swing for multiple checks off of this card alone. Then the icing on the cake is for when we're digivolving on top of this card, it allows us to be able to give whatever we're digivolving into Security Attack Plus, which if we're attacking multiple times, especially with Security Attack Plus, means we could rip through the opponent's security relatively easily. And to subsidize the loss of promo Weregarurumon, instead I'm going to be running 3 copies of Weregarurumon from Starter Deck 16, just because its native ability is doing something very similar to what the promo is doing, allowing us to still multi-attack on our level 5 slot. We just have to discard a card instead of having Garurumon in its Digivolution source. Then its inheritable ability isn't adding damage, it's adding more control by allowing us to, once per turn, when our Digimon is going to be attacking, discard a card from our hand to delete one of the opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon. And you might stop and think, wait a second, this is a purple card in a blue deck, how could we actually use this? Well, it's because the name-based evolution allows us to ignore color, so we could use this with any of our level 4 Garurumon named cards. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Weregarurumon X antibody. So Weregarurumon X antibody is a combo card to pair up with either of our base forms, and the reward for doing so allows us to be able to unsuspend this Digimon, which is already pretty good because both of them with their multi-attacking potential, and the unsuspend off of this card means that we could attack 3 times already. And then it even has an upside for utilizing it with our bases or with the X antibody option in its source to be able to bounce one of the opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon back to the hand for some added free control. And then when it comes to the level 6 lineup, even though I'm running a pretty light level 6 lineup, it's still impactful enough to be able to allow us to close out games when we utilize them. So I'm going to be using 2 copies of the brand new Starter Deck 16 Metalgarurumon X. So just like the level 5, we could utilize this card in our blue deck just because we care about the name-based evolution, allowing us to ignore color. Then this card has a decent amount of flexibility on how we could actually utilize it offensively and defensively. So if we're utilizing it defensively, we want to try to set up the Blasted Digivolution ability just because we could be aggressive with our level 5s, leave it out, and then when the opponent is eventually going to try to swing into our level 5s to be able to clear it if they can't by an effect, that allows us to Blast Evolve into Metalgarurumon X, which allows us to then trigger its when Digivolving ability to trash up to 3 cards from our hand and gain a memory for each one we trashed. Ideally, we're going to want to trash the 3 cards from our hand to be able to gain the 3 memory to anti-tempo the opponent and potentially force end their turn. But we could also utilize this ability offensively just because if we normally Digivolve up into this card, that still allows us to trigger this ability to basically make the evolution free, which allows us to easily line up a Metalgarurumon X antibody. But this card also has a pretty decent when attacking ability when we're going to swing with this card, just because it allows us to discard a card from our hand to be able to delete the lowest level Digimon on the opponent's field. So between all of the bouncing and deletion on our level 5's abilities, this should ideally let us be able to delete a higher level Digimon, which is some really solid forms of control. And then the other level 6 of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Metalgarurumon X antibody. So Metalgarurumon X antibody does digivolve on top of a Metalgarurumon for 1, which is pretty decent because our Metalgarurumon Ace is a Metalgarurumon, and because of its free evolution, allows us to easily go up into this card. Then the reward for doing so is its when digivolving ability to be able to unsuspend this Digimon and have it gain the blocker ability until the end of the opponent's turn. Most of the time, we're going to be using this offensively just because of that unsuspend to be able to line up an additional attack. Then on top of that, it has a nice secondary ability where once per turn, when this Digimon becomes unsuspended, as long as we have Metalgarurumon or the X antibody option in its Digivolution source, we get to return all of the opponent's Digimon with the lowest level back into their hand. So we could use this in combination with Metalgarurumon Ace's removal ability to be able to remove quite a large variety of threats off of the opponent's field. And then when it comes to the level 7s, unfortunately, the way that the colors work for the deck versus the level 7s used, we're going to have to use the level 7s exclusively off of Metalgarurumon X antibody, which is why I'm going to be running more copies of that versus the Ace Metalgarurumon. But I'm going to be running 1 copy of the BT5 Omnimon, just because this is a fantastic card to be able to close out games, just because of the Wind Digivolving ability of Blitz, and the Wind Digivolving ability to unsuspend this Digimon, allowing us to get an extra attack out of nowhere. Then, even if we don't win the game off of this card and we don't have the perfect full combo, it's still a very strong card to end off on, just because of its all turns ability to add even more protection to our Digimon. It's going to be very difficult to remove our Omnimon, which is why I'm also going to be running 2 copies of Omnimon X antibody, just because I could actually use it with our Omnimon, and that's going to be the way that this deck is kind of designed to, but I could still use Omnimon X antibody even without the Blitz Omnimon. The reward for utilizing this card is trying to take advantage of its Wind Digivolving ability to add some extra removal into the deck. Then its Wind Digivolving ability and when attacking ability allows us to place an X antibody option or a level 6 from its Digivolution source to the bottom of our deck to then reveal all cards in the opponent's security, pick any one of them, and straight up throw it into their trash, which allows us to make our plays and swings even safer, knowing that we took the most threatening thing out of their security. Next, on to the Tamers, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Davis. So BT3 Davis is still just one of the best generic blue Tamers for any deck to use, just because it's an added consistency tool, allowing us to use its on-play ability to look for our blue Digimon. Unfortunately, because we are running some purple Digimon, it won't be able to search out those, but there's still plenty of blue Digimon in this deck for us to grab, while also being a memory fixing Tamer, so that way we are always guaranteed 3 memory at the start of our turn to make our plays possible. Then I'm going to be running 3 copies of Cool Boy, just because Cool Boy is another consistency tool with its on-play ability, looking for our X-Form Digimon and our X antibody option. Then it's adding some additional resources, just because when one of our Digimon digivolves into the same level with X antibody in its traits, then we could suspend this Tamer to gain a memory and draw an additional card to make our plays even more powerful. And then as far as the option lineup, I'm running a pretty diverse option lineup, where I'm going to be running 1 copy of Ice Wall to try to stall out the opponent, 1 copy of Full Moon Meteor Impact as one of the best, if not the best, bounce removal option in the game, on top of 2 copies of Blue Memory Boost, just for even more consistency for searching for our blue Digimon, with gaining that extra 2 memory later for more powerful follow-up plays, and 3 copies of the X antibody option, so that way we could use this card to be able to combo off thanks to its inheritable ability to digivolve mid-attack. And that's pretty much it for the deck. It is a pretty interesting and pretty fun iteration on what Metalgarurumon was already doing, and there's still a whole bunch of other useful cards that you could think about incorporating into the deck to make it even more powerful. So if you wanted to, you could run the promo Sagittarius mode for some more bouncing, another Weregarurumon for us to use in the level 5 slots, on top of even more consistency on having that protection inheritable ability. Then if you want to try to push the damage, you could run something like Offense Plugin A, just to be able to give our Digimon Security Attack Plus, so that way we could use that with the multi-attacking to rip through the opponent's security relatively easily. Then we have the EX1 Gabumon to try to be able to dig out our Tamers, which is pretty decent because our Tamers allow us to do lots of different things, especially depending on the Tamer that we're going to be using. So we also could think about utilizing Starter Deck 16 Matt Ishida to combo with our purple cards to allow us to be able to gain some alternative memory that way, while being another memory fixing Tamer. And then we even have some more cards to think about, like the Bond package. Then we have more removal options in the form of Metal Storm and Great Maelstrom, and we even have a EX1 Gurumon to be able to play out our 3-costed mat, which would be the BT6 one if we were to run it. And the crazy thing about this is the deck actually has some decent legs when it comes to potential future upgrades. In BT14, we get the training options for even more consistency, on top of the Bukamon egg probably being the most important egg just because it can help us gain jamming, making our attacks even safer. Then in EX5, we get the purple and blue Garurumon X line, on top of the fact that in BT15, we get a new blue Garurumon line to further flesh out what the deck is capable of. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.